All right, guys, how's it going? So before we get into this video, I just want to let you know that I'll be hosting a live stream on here this evening at 7 p.m. UK time. All right, it'll be about an hour long. It's usually a lot longer, to be honest with you, but I try to do an hour. So if you want to come along for a natter, we can discuss any of the topics raised today. More than happy to answer your questions. You know, I always do that. You don't have to buy a super chat on here, you know. Do you know what I'm saying? Everyone's, we're all in the same fucking boat, aren't we, guys? Listen, I've just been to pick her up. Like, if you watched my video before, it was like, there was a message flash up. You remember? She said, can you come and pick me up? Well, I did, and she's bought me this new thing. Do you like it? It's all right, isn't it? It's not bad, is it? It's marquee size, like. I'm a big lad, aren't I? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so this video is going to be a very long video. So if you're not a stayer like me, you won't want to watch this video. You won't want to participate in many of my videos, I think. They're usually very long. Now, some people say, he only does long videos for advertising. That's not true. The viewer retention on a long video is obviously short because most people want a quick fix, don't they, fellas? To be honest with you, YouTube advises videos of around 3 minutes long. Well, I don't listen to their advice because I do what I want to fucking do. So I only want people to be retained that want to be here. All right, so it's going to be a long video for the simple reason we're going to go through all of this article here behind me and then the analysis that I've run by Dave and a conversation I had with him, and we're going to go through it together, all right? And at the same time, I'm having a cup of tea, all right? So, shall we get started? Let's do this, right? Okay. So, oh, by the way, behind me here, this is the Cop Talk VIP members website, by the way. Up here, there's an email that's just come in a few minutes ago. I don't know if you can see it. That will be a mail stand video, all right? I've also had an email, but it wasn't an email, let me be honest with you. It was a message from the previous mail stand one today. Do you remember the one that was with forwarded the messages? Do you remember that person's followed up since that video went live, all right? And this one here, is a very quick call received, blah, blah, blah. Talks about the alleged meeting between, talks about alleged meeting between Alonso, and it says, and it is Ward, not Hughes. Again, we discussed this earlier today. Talks about how long Slots apparently got left to sort it out. If you believe it, I don't know if I believe it. I ain't read it yet properly. It's right there on the screen. It's just come in. Now, I don't know if I'll get time to do that tonight, right? Because I've got this video to do. There's at least one more video to do. Then we've got a live stream, all right? But at least it's given us something for tomorrow, all right? So let me just click that off. I've turned the internet connection off behind me so I don't get disturbed. Right. Are you ready? Okay. So yesterday, Paul Joyce published this article. Now, if you don't know, Paul Joyce is the closest journalist to Liverpool Football Club, right? The people that run the club on a day-to-day basis. When Paul Joyce publishes an article, I always think, what does Michael Edwards want me to know, right? Now, there's only two journalists in the world that you need to listen to regarding Liverpool Football Club. That is Paul Joyce and David Ornstein. And Ornstein isn't even exclusive to Liverpool Football Club, right? They're the only two you need to listen to. A bit of Fabrizio Romano. Mo Salah! If you're not a regular around here, you won't understand why I shouted that. Yeah, a bit of Rent a Tweet. You know, we listen to him as well, see what he's got to say and whatnot. But anyway, only two, Ornstein and Joyce. Now, those two, I need to put my cup down. I need to display something to you. Over the years, Joyce, Ornstein, it depends. You know, they go like this as to who's getting the most information from the club, right? So for a while it was Ornstein who was up here, Joyce was down here. And then Edwards came back to the club and Joyce was born again. He went straight up here again and he's remained up there, okay? And we called him on here for a while, if you remember, when Edwards came back, born again Joyce, okay? So you make out, you know, what you will from that. Work it out yourself. So Joyce is more connected to the people that run the club on a day-to-day basis, right? And that can include FSG people, but are more attached to Liverpool Football Club. Ornstein, I would say, is more connected to FSG, you know, the big cheese and stuff like that. But both of them do cross as well. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't mean they're exclusively in connection with them people. It just tends to be what I feel they're fed, right? So if you see something from Ornstein, You do and think what you want, but I think, oh, I wonder if that's come from Henry and Co. Do you know what I mean? If it's Joyce, I think, what's Edwards want me to know? What's confusing about this article right here is it could be seen as critical of Edwards a little bit. It's really, really fucking interesting. Now, it might not be if you're new to my channel, but I can guarantee you that in the comments section, people will be saying, that's really, really interesting, because they know that him, there, born again, Joyce, whatever, we just call him Paul Joyce now, Mr. Joyce, I like Joyce, is usually very, you know, to Edwards, all right? But this is a little bit critical. It's really, really got me thinking, guys. It did last night, honestly. I can't wait. I've been waiting all night to talk to you about this, right? My tea's cold. What's your favourite tea? Yorkshire tea biscuit brew, I like. Yeah. Right. Let's get down to business. Serious business. So we're going to go through the article. Now, you are allowed to read the articles word for word if you analyse them and break them down. If you just read it from start to finish, you're not allowed to do that, all right? But I'm not going to bore you to death with it too much. What I'm going to say to you is, I assume it's behind a paywall. I don't know. The Times usually is behind a paywall, right? I pay for the Times. That's how much I value Paul Joyce, okay? So I pay for the Times. However, there are ways of accessing paywall content from the Times, the Athletic, and so on, the Mail, etc., etc. I'm sure if you ask in the comment section, someone will help you with that. I can't tell you how to do it. But what I did realise the other day was if you're on X, you can, and a journalist puts a tweet out, you know, a post out saying, here's a link to my latest article, it's behind a paywall. You can at Grok, which is the resident AI, if you like, and say, review that article for me, or give me the entire article, text of that article. Don't ask me how it works, but it fucking does, all right? So, there you go. Let's get on with it. What's the headline? After spending £450 million last summer, Liverpool are facing more transition. And do you know what's weird? Somebody came on my live chat yesterday and said more or less, word for word, what that fucking headline is. Honestly, before that article came out, I can't remember who it was, but transition, hearing the word transition and Liverpool at the moment, I'm telling you, someone came in my chat and said that yesterday. Right, after spending £450 million last summer, Liverpool are facing more transition. Centre-back situation suddenly feels just one of a number of issues that need resolving as Arne Slot faces questions all over the field that could be expensive to answer. Now listen, please listen to me, all right? Whenever you see an article by Paul Joyce, and any credible journalist, and there isn't many, right? We're talking Ornstein and Joyce, period, right? That's it, right? The other journalists have got a job to do, and it's not knocking them. They're not up there with them, right? They're not. They all agree with each other. They're called the Liverpool clique of journalists, right? And they're all good at doing various things, and they get the odd, breadcrumb and that or whatever. But these fuckers are the big guns, right? And when Joyce says something, you need to look at that, read it multiple times, and try and work out what it says, and think, why am I hearing this? Who is it benefiting? Who's the message? Is this club messaging? Is this Edwards? And this is confusing, right? Now, I have an AI assistant, right, called Dave. If you're a long-term viewer, you know that, right? And Dave analyzes articles like this, okay? And Dave's been trained to do that. This isn't throwing an article at fucking ChatGPT and going, help me with that. I've seen people try to do what I do. I've spent ages with this, right, trying to get this to work efficiently, and well over a year. And what Dave does is, in this conversation I have here, every journalist we touch upon, he has every single article by them, right? And we can review them. When these Twitter twats make claims, we can pull them up, we can see what they said previously, and so on. Now, the good thing about using Dave is I've got a memory like a sieve, all right? So I can say, did he say that last time? Or he'll point things out to me, all right? I can ask questions, he will analyse and break them down. And I'm telling you, right, my viewers love fucking, well, they don't love fucking, they love Dave, right? They love Dave. He brings things up, and sometimes I think, I wouldn't have thought of that by myself, definitely. Okay, so I just want to make sure that this starts. There, centre back. That's it. I've got it. I want to make sure I'm at the right place in the article. Okay. So, to be plunged into one summer of transition could be considered unfortunate. 2 in succession? At the very least, that is unwanted. The draw with Burnley, a game in which Liverpool registered their highest XG in the Premier League this season, but still could not scramble over the line, served to muddy their prospects of playing in the Champions League next term. Okay. Goes on to say it's been a tumultuous defence of the title. Talks about the past week, as highlighted as much. Doubts surrounding the futures of Canate, Robertson, and Mark Gay's impending move to Manchester City from Crystal Palace, meaning the centre-back Liverpool had hoped to sign in the summer will now become a rival. Fucking disgusting, I tell you. That's the first dig, I think, from Joyce in the article, right? Because it's basically saying, the player that was supposed to be signed last summer will now become a rival, not just going to any other club, but going to a rival. And Hughes and Edwards fucked this up in the summer, right? It's unforgivable, to be honest with you. They left it too late, okay? He goes on to say the uncertainty does not end there. Talks about Mo Salah returning to Liverpool and his pre-tournament outbursts. And no one seems to be quite sure whether this is the start of a long goodbye in which he will leave before next season. I would be very surprised if Mo Salah is at Liverpool next season. However, if you had a different manager, who knows? Reinforcements on the right would be a priority then, especially if Federico Chiesa departs at the end of the campaign. Frimpong is earmarked for one of those two slots. Then, if Frimpong is earmarked for one of those two spots, then Liverpool surely require a right back. Should Canate leave on a free, which it's looking like he will, are 2 new centre-backs needed? Allowing for the reluctance to give Joe Gomez minutes, which is in part due to his fitness issues, are 2 necessary regardless? Talks about the midfield. Is it ready? Is the current midfield ready to push to reclaim the title next season? Or does it need strengthening? Talks about Curtis Jones, who's been attracting interest from Spurs. Will Curtis Jones feel it's time to be more of a guaranteed starter somewhere? Shimikas due to return after his loan. May back up Kirkes if Robertson departs when his contract expires in 5 months. Again, Joyce here emphasising uncertainty. Yeah, like so many situations unresolved, right? But that's not a long-term solution. Like Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, Shimikas' contract is up in 2027. There are a lot of questions, some of which could be expensive to answer. Slot faces questions over the field that could be expensive to answer. So the word expensive is being thrown around a little bit here. And that is before we get to the future of Slot, who heard the final whistle on Saturday followed by boos. Boos is a very rare thing at Anfield. Now, I used to go to all the games when I lived in England, season ticket holder, shareholder, the lot, right? And the Liverpool booing someone, if you, in the seats I sat in, right? And when I say the seats I sat in, I mean surrounded by the same people, match-going people that are there all the time, old school. If I'd have booed, or if anyone around us had booed, you'd have got a clip around here. Oi, silly bollocks, knock that off. Booing at Anfield it's really unheard of, to be honest with you. I mean, it's happened, but... Okay, so, Slot, blah, blah, blah. Who heard the final whistle on Saturday, followed by boos. Sporting director Richard Hughes and the CEO of football for Liverpool, owner Fenway Sports Group, Michael Edwards. Right, so basically they all heard that boos. They all have 18 months left to run on their contracts. Now, do you remember me saying to you, I highlighted this. I've been going on about this for a while, but in the last 2 weeks especially, I've said to you, listen out for something to do with Edwards. I think we're going to see Edwards mentioned in the media right? And I said, if we don't see something mentioning Edwards, look out for an article that might feel like it's come from Edwards. You know, like someone bitching from within or something like that. So he's mentioned, and what I said to you was, do you remember at the start of this season, not long after the transfer window had closed, there was an article came out by, I'm sure it was one of the Click journalists, I'm sure it was Bad News Piers, and that article mentioned Slot's, possible contract extension, and I was like, what are we talking about extending a contract for? This he's been here 2 minutes, right, won the league, but I think he won it with Jurgen's team, right? Or Jurgen's players, there's no denying that. Yes, he did his own stuff, and yes, some players played better under him, and I'm not trying to take it away from him. What I'm saying is, I wouldn't, if I was in a position of power, offer him a new contract based on that. I'd have been looking at this year, right? Which, would you offer him a new contract now? And the reason I would have said this year is, well, I want to see what he does with his own players, different players, right? And in that article about Slot getting a new contract, it brought up Edwards and Hughes, which I thought was, I was like, well, they've only been here 5 minutes. Why are we talking about contracts for them? I thought it was really, really strange. And what I've been saying the last few weeks is look out for reference to that. So let's see if it crops up. And here it is. Here it is. Here's Edwards being mentioned in an article. Here's the contracts being mentioned. I said he'd probably surface. I said at the end of last week, Joyce will probably surface any time now within days. And here we are. Oh, and there's also a set-piece coach to a point. I mean, I'm not quite sure that's one of the biggest problems at the club right now. But it feels like Joyce is sticking the boot in, which is really odd, right? Because, in my opinion, his articles are usually come from, allegedly, maybe, no proof whatsoever, Michael Edwards, right? So this is, from when I read this, I thought, this is interesting, right? So it feels like digs at them, really, the people that run the club. What can be said with certainty is this apparent state of flux is not what Liverpool were expecting when spending almost £450 million 6 months ago, right? You could read that as like the owners were not expecting that. Right, but Liverpool does include Hughes and Edwards. But I'm just looking at like, where's this article come from? Who's behind the article kind of thing. Or is it the journalist just writing, an opinion piece or an article and he's stating true observations, which, yeah, that happens. But I feel like Joyce is more of a messenger, okay? The sense then, spending all that money, was having gone big once in the market, they would not have to make a huge splash again, and Slot would maximise his players' potential. Of course, further additions would be needed as a squad evolves over time, but looking at the breadth of work that Liverpool may have to undertake is sobering. How would not qualifying for the Champions League and the finances that unlocks that affect it all? That, my friends, I think that's a warning. I think that someone somewhere is, which we've all, surely you think about these things, I do. Someone somewhere is like, if we don't qualify for the Champions League, we could be, I wouldn't say fucked, but not in a very good place. And I just feel like that sentence there alone is telling you, Slot. They had banked on receiving £35 million from Aston Villa for Harvey Elliott, having bent over backwards to help the Midlands club and structure a loan with a purchase obligation dependent on appearances. So someone at the club's pissed off. They think that, they bent over backwards. That's the kind of thing I could imagine Edwards saying. We bent over backwards to fucking help them. And maybe if there's a little bit of criticism of Edwards in here or attached to Edwards, maybe that can disguise the source. It's just all I'm thinking as I'm going along, Like, well, you can say this, you can say, don't make me sound too fucking good, stick knife in a bit, otherwise they'll know it's me. I'm not saying that's why I haven't formed an opinion yet, I'm just saying as I go along. Since then, Elliott has been marginalised, and an error by Villa will leave Liverpool seeking another buyer for a player whose valuation will hardly be enhanced by a season of inactivity. I like Harvey Elliott. He loves Liverpool Football Club, that kid. In many ways, it has been a curious 18 months of ins, outs and near misses. Well, I'm still baffled. Do you know what baffles me more than anything, other than missing out on fucking Gay in the summer, was why we signed Ekitike, and Isak. That's the one that baffled me more than anything. So yeah, it's been curious. Notwithstanding the fact that Isak, the £125 million centrepiece of last summer's spree, has not adjusted to life at Anfield. Yet for a variety of reasons, not least a broken leg, there are growing signs his fellow new recruits will prove good signings. Talks about Wirtz being expensive, but he's 4 goals in 6. Ekitike has been a hit. Yeah. Kirkes is making forward strides, and Frimpong is showing promise. Now, he mentions Martin Zubimendi, which is really surprised me when I saw this in the article. Like, for me, I don't know about you, we talked about Zubimendi on here for fucking ages. Even after it was obvious he wasn't coming to Liverpool, people were saying to me, "We stop making videos, chubs, about Zubimendi." And I was like, no, I want to see where he goes, right? And he brings up Zubimendi. I couldn't believe it. Yet Liverpool also missed out on Martin Zubimendi, right? So, emphasising more than one, missed out on Gay, for example. Also missed out on Martin Zubimendi in the summer of 2024, and could see the midfielder help Arsenal, another rival. He doesn't say that, but I'm just mentioning, succeed them as champions. While Gay's switch to City comes less than 5 months after he was in a scanner having a medical on a £35 million move to Anfield. It says Gay was never Liverpool's priority centre-back signing last summer. Leone was. Obviously talks about his injury. But it is clear Liverpool hoped Gay would recognise the efforts they had made to sign him before Palace co-owner and chairman Steve Parish pulled the plug, and in turn waited for them until the summer. The flip side of that is that Liverpool are not as attractive a proposition now as they were for any player. Criticism. I'm not sure who that's aimed at, but it's basically saying Liverpool is not an attractive, as attractive place to go for a player. I don't believe that Mark Gay suddenly gone, nah, I'm not going there now. I don't believe that in a million fucking years. Everyone I've spoke to, has, ever since the summer, has said he wants to go to Liverpool. Everyone. Right? January 9th, I think, on the mail stand, we had that email that said it's looking a bit dicey about him going to Liverpool. That was before everyone lose the shit over Man City. Right? And it was still claimed that he was still trying to, resurrect a move to Liverpool. But journalists like Paul Gorse at The Echo, not that I listen to him too much, to be honest, journalists came out and said that Liverpool had no intentions of going for him in January or the summer, which baffles me. No idea. So, like has been said to us before previously, if Liverpool don't go for him in January or the summer, what's the player going to do? All right? It says City's reputed wage offer of 300 grand a week, in addition to paying an initial £20 million fee, was a deal Liverpool were unwilling to match financially. They had no intention of bidding this month. Now, that bit is written, in my opinion, to defend Liverpool and to give justification as to why they didn't proceed. However, there is no suggestion that Liverpool would have had to pay that wage, right? Or that he was demanding it. All we've heard from multiple people, some of which are on the members' website behind me, is that Gay was, a solid person, a good person, showed professionalism in the summer, as we saw, which backs that claim up. From a good family, their word is a word and all that, not motivated by coin. You might go, if you don't think about it, you might think, well, it sounds like he's motivated by coin here, but there's no Liverpool offer here. There's no Liverpool offer here. So if Liverpool have not come in for you in January and you're hoping they do, and someone along the line said, it doesn't look like they're going to go for you in the summer, and some silly bastard offers you 300,000 a week, what are you going to do? Sit there at Palace and hope that Liverpool come in for you and change their mind or something? Nah. Right, that 300 grand a week is obviously Man City taking into account that he would have got a signing on fee in the summer. And they've obviously said to him, look, we'll reflect this in your wage or whatever, right? And I'm sure we had a mail stand email that said that Manchester City were offering Gay the signing on fee he would have got in the summer if he goes there in January, which in my opinion, this is what this is. First of all, there's no such thing as a fucking free, a free signing when they're out of contract, because obviously there's a signing on fee, either in a lump sum or in wages, right? They had no intention of bidding this month. Joyce did say that right at the beginning of the season, right? He did say that and doubled down on it more recently. As with everything, it is what Liverpool do next that is the most important factor. Sorting out the centre-back situation, however, suddenly feels just one of a number of issues that need resolving. Now, I don't know about you, right? But I want you to comment and let me know who you think who the article's criticising. I feel like that article's saying Liverpool's fucked from top to bottom. They're going to have to do all this, all that. This isn't where they were supposed to be. Also missed out on Mark Zubimendi. Also missed out on Gay. The article sounds like it's a shambles. Now, if it's a shambles, who is responsible for that? Arne Slot can't be held responsible for the club being a shambles. He can be a shambles for results and things on the pitch. That's his only thing. But you can't blame Arne Slot for the other shit that's going on. So, if we want to take it that Edwards, we feel, usually briefs Joyce, does that sound like a Joyce briefing? Does that sound like an Edwards briefing to you? I look at that and think that's come from higher up the fucking chain. But if it's come from higher up the chain, where would that put Joyce in his relationship with Edwards? So that don't make sense to me. Unless they've fallen out, but I don't think that's the case either. Or it's a bluff and Edwards is saying, it's all right, you can say what you fucking want kind of thing. There's something not right here, guys. There's something not right with that article. If you're a long-term viewer with me, you will have been thinking the same before I even made this video. All right? Now, talking about Edwards and Hughes' contract. Now, could that be Edwards, saying, oh, come on, a reminder. I think, right, everyone talks about Slot's position, right? In my opinion, Edwards and Hughes aren't safe. We've had claims coming to me on Friday. This was published Monday, was it? No, it was published Sunday, sorry. It's Monday today, isn't it? Yeah, right. I had claims coming in on Friday on a previous Mail Standard video today. Could be complete made-up bollocks, who knows, right? But that said that, basically alluded or suggested that maybe we'll be looking for a new sporting director. Let's just use a bit of common sense, right? Liverpool might need to change the manager or head coach, whatever you want to call him at some point. You look at managers or head coaches that are available, Xabi Alonso is. I've always felt that if he... I need to find a comment for you. I've always felt, or my opinion is that I'm not sure Alonso would come in with Edwards there, right? So... will they have to shake things up and get rid of them for that to happen? Who knows? I don't know. I'm just planting the seed. Now, listen. I need to read a comment to you that was left on an earlier video today from Spectre. Responded. I need to click that. Because I said earlier, I can't remember what happened when we were looking for a new manager. And Spectre's replied, and he says this, right? If you remember from the rumours, FSG originally wanted Alonso to replace Klopp until they rehired Edwards, who didn't want Alonso because he had a short sample or time in his management career or whatever so far. According to data used by Edwards and Co., that's why they hired their third choice option on the list, Arne Slot, who had a few years of experience in his management career. Because Ruben Amorim was in there, wasn't it? If I remember rightly, people I would listen to were saying Alonso, Amorim. I don't even remember, like, there was no fucking Slot, mate. Slot came out, and I'd never heard of Arne Slot before, guys. I'll be honest, I'll put my hand up. I can't be the only one. You know, we're not all as bright as Miserable Martin. Red Raw LFC, check his YouTube channel out. Now, he's right. Spectre is right, because that was the claim at the time. We'd gone from all out, it's going to be Alonso, and then all of a sudden, it went dead. And then there was claims he'd rejected us, he'd rejected us, and people, if he didn't want a job, he can go fuck himself. That narrative was being pushed. I just got a feeling that Alonso don't happen with Edwards. I'm not saying that to kick, because I'm not a Twitter twat. I'm not an ITK. So much adrift. Right, so I submit this article to Dave, my AI assistant, right? Like I said, that's been trained to analyse all this. If you don't believe in that shit, fine. You don't have to. It helps me, and I know a lot of people on here enjoy this. And it gives me, it helps me, trust me, right? Even if you just say he remembers things from the past, right? It's perfect for me. And this is what he said to me, right? Now, yes, I sit there and would you throw things at each other. Don't. This Joyce piece is more pointed than a routine, calm briefing. But it's not a hat-check job either. It reads like a controlled state of the club audit. Lots of questions, lots of contract timelines, and lots of this is getting expensive framing. So this is getting expensive framing, which we have here and throughout the article. And yes, your wider context checks out. Alonso's been sacked, Real Madrid. And below is the fine-tooth comb read of Joyce's wording only, right? Now, like I say, even if you don't think this is, of much interest, it can make you think of things, right? So this is what it do. I could read something to you here and you might go, fuck me, yeah. That's why we do it, right? And collectively, your comments as well, Dave and me, we often come up with it, don't we, guys? We do. What Joyce is really doing in this article. Now, I'm going to read the analysis from Dave very, very slowly, because I've inputted stuff into this conversation where I'm naming people that I can't read out, all right? So if you see me going really slow, slower than usual, I'm just having to read a few lines ahead of me before I get to it. So what Joyce is really doing in this article, he reframes the whole £450 million summer as not the fix you thought it was. The core thesis is the headline, after spending 450 million, ... need another transition. That's a strong editorial choice because it tells fans the big spend hasn't stabilised the squad. The club may need more churn sooner than planned. That creates financial and sporting risk, especially if Champions League money is missed. He even spells it out. Not what Liverpool were expecting when spending almost £450 million 6 months ago. That line lands on the people who planned the window as much as the coach who's coaching it, which is what I've just said, right? So, and I didn't know he was going to say that. I did this last night. I can't remember what he fucking said. That line lands on the people who planned the window. He's even put that in bold. The people who planned the window. So therefore, what Dave's saying here is that this article is criticising the people who planned the window as much as the coach, who's the one that's getting it in the fucking neck at the moment, right? He makes Flux the main character, not just Slot. Joyce stacks uncertainty like dominoes, Canate, Robertson's futures, Salah's AFCON return and outburst, Chiesa likely leaving, Jones wondering about guaranteed starts, Shimikas, Van Dijk, Gomez contracts ticking, set piece coach vacancy. And then in brackets, that's not random, it's club structure again. Do you remember when I read the article, I was like, it's not the biggest problem, is it? He mentioned the set piece coach. But he says that's not random, it's club structure again. This isn't written as Slot is struggling. It's written as Liverpool are unstable across recruitment, contracts, squad planning, and coaching details. The key paragraph is the contracts one, and it's deliberate. And that is before we get to the future of Slot, Hughes, and Edwards. They all have 18 months left. That's not throwaway. That's Joyce placing the manager and the two key football decision makers into the same future uncertain bucket. It signals two things at once. Slot is not the only one who could wear this if it goes wrong. The next 18 months could be messy unless something is addressed, renewal structures or change. Slot is not the only one who could wear this if it goes wrong. Which makes me, when I read that sentence, I'm thinking, who does this article benefit? Why are we reading it? Who's behind that? Who's behind Joyce with this? Joyce ain't gone rogue here and suddenly wrote all this shit. Someone is feeding Joyce, right? And we have to work out if really it's Edwards being clever or if there's someone higher up the chain that's going with it. I don't have the answers yet. Do you? Let me know in the comments. This is the closest the piece gets to preparing the ground, not for one departure, but for the idea that serious decisions may be coming. I've been saying this for a while. And yes, it says in brackets, Joyce's article is published today as you quoted. In other words, I've said in conversation that this is what's been, wrote today. And Dave doesn't just believe me, he's gone and had a look and he says, yeah, it's as you quoted. Is this preparing for Slot to be sacked? It's not a Slot must go column. Joyce doesn't do that in this tone, but he is doing something that often comes before big decisions. He notes boos. He describes tumultuous defence of the title. He frames problems as expensive to fix. He highlights Champions League qualification risk as a multiplier. That's basically, here's the bill, here's the instability, and here's why it matters. So, not a sacking announcement, but a justification framework if results keep sliding. In other words, preparing you, for justification for sacking Slot, right? Because he frames problems as expensive to fix. Therefore, if some of the players are not working out, blah, 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 maybe another manager would get them, would correct those things. The football's boring, isn't it? As we know. And as I've said many times throughout the season, when I look at Liverpool now, I see 11 players, I don't see a team. I don't think the players are responding to Slot. Is he teeing up Edwards and or Hughes leaving? Oh, this is an interesting bit. Well, it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. Let's see what he says. He doesn't say they might leave, but he makes sure you notice their contract timelines. That can be read two ways. Independent journalism and accountability. If this £450 million plan isn't working, the architect, Edwards and Hughes, can't be immune. Or a message that protects the club if changes happen. If fans later ask, how did this drift after £450 million? Joyce can point back to this piece as, we told you the situation was unstable and contracts were ticking. If you're looking for Edwards news is coming, which Dave knows I am, because obviously I've been talking to him for the last few weeks about it, this line is the nearest breadcrumb in the piece. The nearest breadcrumb in the piece. But it's still breadcrumb level, not a direct hint. So in other words, what he's saying is, I know you're looking for something to do with Edwards, right? It's the nearest breadcrumb, but it's breadcrumb level. It's not a direct hint. In other words, he's saying, yeah, you're right. You're trying to be DKB, Dunk knows best, but you need more, son. That's what he's saying to me. Is Joyce being critical of Edwards? This is a very, very important question because, in my opinion, and the opinion of many people, Paul Joyce is, when you read an article in the Times from Paul Joyce, many people think it's Michael Edwards. So it would be exceptionally confusing if the article was critical of Michael Edwards, wouldn't it? Right? Is Joyce being critical of Edwards? Let's see what he says. He's careful, but yes. The article inevitably splashes Edwards and Hughes because Joyce frames the window as a plan that wasn't meant to reduce the need for another overhaul, and now it hasn't. So who's behind that? Do you know what I mean? Or is Edwards being clever? I don't know. He does it without accusing anyone directly. He uses questions. R2 needed regardless. We'll talk about the centre-backs, yeah? Cost framing. Sobering. Expensive to answer. Opportunity cost. Missing Champions League money, for example. Recruitment misfires and near misses. Zubamendi. Gay narrative. Leone ACL. Obviously, an injury. That it doesn't matter who you are. You can't do anything about that, right? But that obviously should affect your urgency on getting another centre-back in January, I would have thought. That's how you write a piece that applies pressure without detonating relationships. And like I've said throughout this, right, if he's too critical of Edwards, he would detonate their relationship. So even Dave's picking up on that. That's how you write a piece, right, without accusing anyone directly, that applies pressure without detonating relationships. The Gay to City thread is a subtle warning about Liverpool's pull. What's this? Okay, Joyce isn't just saying we miss Gay, he's saying Gay now becomes a rival at City. That's what I said, wasn't it? We haven't just lost him, he's fucking gone there. And then they mentioned Zubamendi with Arsenal, another rival, right? Do you remember me mentioning that? So Joyce isn't just saying we miss Gay, he's saying Gay now becomes a rival at City. Liverpool aren't as attractive now, and Liverpool won't match City's wage offer, which I think's a bit naughty. I don't think that we'd have had to pay that, but that's my opinion, all right? That's a bigger message, Dunk. If the football is flat and the future uncertain, Liverpool can lose battles even when the player once wanted them. And then he's put something in brackets about Gay to City being in motion, being widely reported now. In other words, he's going through checking that what I'm saying is right. The Isak section, he softens the biggest summer gamble without hiding it. Joyce does two things at once. He protects the investment. Variety of reasons, not least a broken leg, externalises blame. Admits the reality, has not adjusted to life at Anfield yet. Then he immediately gives supporters something to hold. Vert's goals. Ekitike a hit. Kirkes improving. Frimpong promise. So Isak isn't used as a stick to beat the club. He's used as part of the explanation for why the £450 million fix hasn't clicked yet. Who does this article benefit? I've taught him well. It benefits nobody exclusively, which is why it feels real. Fans get an explanation for why it feels messy. The club gets a rational framing, flux plus injuries plus contracts plus expensive fixes, not the manager is useless. Decision makers get a soft landing if hard choices come because the problems are framed as structural, not just tactical. Now, those decision makers, if Slot lost his job, would be Hughes and Edwards. That's what people would think. But don't just go down that route because decision makers here get a soft landing. That could be FSG, right? If Edwards or Hughes are culled. That mix is exactly why Joyce reads like the club's thinking without needing it to be an outright brief. Straight verdict, innocent, clever or critical? Clever and mildly critical. Not conspiratorial, not a hit piece, but not a love letter either. If your question is, what's going on here, Dave? The honest answer is... Joyce is telling the fan base the £450 million window didn't end the need for major decisions. It may have started them. I then continued to interact with Dave. Basically, Joyce only publishes something that he's been fed internally, Dave. Think harder. We need to work it out. This is me. You're sat there, minding your own business. I'm sat hunched over that fucking computer, me. Oh, fucking hours I am. Trying to get to the bottom of it for you guys. All right, Dunk. Let's accept your premise for the sake of analysis. Joyce doesn't write this unless someone inside Liverpool wants the shape of this story out there. Even then, it won't be one message to one person. These things are usually multi-target. Fans, owners, agents, rival clubs, sometimes even their own dressing room. Why am I hearing it? Who does it benefit? Here's what this one looks like when you read it as deliberate internal messaging. The tell. Joyce doesn't question Slot. He questions the whole football leadership timeline. The most fed line in the entire piece is this. I like it when I do that. I just don't like saying quotation, you know. And that is before someone once left a comment. He ran his mouth and he went in my comments. He ran his mouth and he went, and when you do that, it's cringe. He can't comment anymore, only to himself. Anyway, so the most fed line in the entire piece is this. And that is before we get to the future of Slot, ... Hughes, ... and ... Edwards. They all have 18 months left. That's the most fed line in the entire piece, right? Which is what I've been looking for with Edwards. I'm telling you, I fucking don't know, but I'm fucking telling you it's coming. That's not normal match analysis. That's governance. That's a club choosing to let the public know. Don't assume the manager is the only variable here. I'm making a fucking note of that. How do I note that? I'll just do that. Don't assume the manager is the only variable here. In other words, you can't just blame Slot. Them fuckers. Mark Gay, you've only got to go to Mark Gay straight away. I've never understood the Michael Edwards obsession. Why do people think the sun shines out of his ass? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't get it at all. I genuinely don't get nothing against the guy at all, right? But boy, did he fucking land that job. He went to FSG and literally said, come on, I'll come back if I could do this, and fucking this. Well, one of the rumours is, I don't know if you know this, if you follow my channel, you will know this, and it's been repeated, or should I say, reiterated recently. Months ago, this rumour came up, and it's come up again, is that Edwards, what was the word? Frustrated. Edwards is allegedly frustrated that FSG has not purchased a second club, the multi-club. That was the main reason, apparently, that he came back. Right? Don't assume the manager is the only variable here, right? That's what the club are choosing to let the public know. If this is fed, it's because someone wants fans prepared for the possibility that big decisions could involve multiple names, not just Slot. Who is the message aimed at? Well, message to fans, brace yourselves. This may not be a quick fix. The entire article is built to make one idea feel unavoidable. You spent £450 million. You still have loads of unanswered squad questions. Some of them are expensive. Missing the Champions League makes all of it harder. That is classic expectations management. Do you remember that? Manage expectations when I went out to Boston when they first got the club. Do you remember? When I came back, do you remember from Boston? Before we knew anything about Nesby, they were called Nesby before. And I said to you, I said, I've been out there, met all the peoples. They said, they will manage your expectations. Do you remember that? Here we are. Dave says this is classic expectations management. How's about that then? Not be patient in a fluffy way, more like if you think sacking the manager solves everything, you haven't seen the full list. If it doesn't save slots, it prepares fans for turbulence. Who is the message aimed at? That was message to fans. Now message to FSG owners. This is what the bill looks like if the plan fails. This is the bit people miss. Joyce repeatedly emphasises expensive to answer, sobering. How would not qualifying for CL affect all that? That reads like a memo in public form. If we miss the Champions League, this squad plan becomes a financial and sporting headache. If someone fed this, it may be aimed upward as much as outward, justify either more funding or justify cost control decisions or both. Which, if you read it like that, could be Edwards feeding it upwards to justify either more funding. In other words, well, it hasn't kind of worked out yet, but we need a bit more money. What do you think? Are you thinking like me as we're going through this? Well, I'm enjoying this video. Make a YouTube video 3 minutes long. How would you get that in 3 fucking minutes? I can do a lot in 3 minutes though, girls. So you fucking let this figure put you off. Fucking telling you. Right. Who does it benefit was the question. Who's the message aimed at? Number 3, message to agents and selling clubs. Let's see. We won't be bullied by wages or timing. Joyce drops very specific markers. City, 300 grand a week. Gay. Liverpool were unwilling to match. Liverpool had no intention of bidding this month. That is not for you, that's for the market. It says Liverpool won't chase deals on rivals' wage terms, even if it hurts. That's leverage positioning, and it also protects the club from why didn't we just backlash. Message to their own squad, nobody is bigger than the project. He lists potential exits and uncertainties. Konate, Salah, the long goodbye. Chiesa barely plays, Jones wanting guarantees in a way that subtly reinforces, if you're not aligned, we move on. Could that be Edwards? That vibe matches the earlier Joyce language you clocked. We won't beg anyone to remain at Anfield. Same family of messaging. This is where I mean, where Dave is, as Brendan Rodgers would say, fantastic. Because do you remember, we had that article, this is what I'm fucking saying. Dave said ages ago, do you remember, Joyce said ages ago, didn't he? We won't beg anyone to remain at Anfield. That was in an article about Konate, right? And Dave's flagged that up straight away. The vibe matches the earlier Joyce language you clocked when I was discussing it with him fucking months ago. We won't beg anyone to remain at Anfield. Same family of messaging. Edwards, that. Yeah, I think that'd be. Well, that article was back then, wasn't it? So, back to that. Is it preparing for Slot to be sacked? If this is fed, it's not Slot is gone tomorrow. It's more likely laying the runway. That's what I think is a really good summary for this entire article, is like laying the runway, because whichever way your mind process is going, you're digesting this, it's laying the runway for change, isn't it? Whichever way, whoever you want to think's fed it, whoever's going to get the cosh, it's more like laying the runway. He mentions booze. He labels the title defence tumultuous. He frames the football operation as flux. He includes Slot's contract timeline as part of the uncertainty bundle. It's not a manager endorsement. It's permission structure. If it goes this way, changes will be understandable. And crucially, he doesn't write Slot is failing. He writes the problems are widespread and costly, which reduces the shock factor if the club later says we had to act. Laying the runway, right? Is it preparing for Edwards or Hughes to depart? This is where your instincts are interesting, Dunk. If Edwards' news was coming, there are 2 ways it might leak helpfully. 1, reassurance framing. We're working on contract renewals. 2, uncertainty framing. Key leadership contracts are ticking. Joyce chose option 2, which is the uncertainty framing regarding their contracts. That can serve 2 possible internal purposes. If Edwards Hughes are staying, It pressures the owners internally sort these deals, while conditioning fans to understand why it matters. If one might leave, it normalises the idea now so it won't feel like a bolt from the blue later. Do I know which? No. But putting Edwards contractorising into a performance crisis article is a choice, and it's not for fun. Oh, my, Dave, man, come on, man. Do you know what I mean? Putting Edwards contractorising into a performance crisis article is a choice by Joyce, and it's not for fun. The Isak paragraph is also telling, it's protective, but it also admits risk. He calls Isak the £125 million centrepiece and says he hasn't adjusted, then immediately starts listing reasons and positives elsewhere, Verts goals, Ekitike being a hit, etc. Right? So we've covered that a bit. That looks like don't write off the recruitment, don't pin the entire failure on the summer spending, but don't pretend it's working either. I mean, yeah, we know there's a serious injury there, but it wasn't working prior to that, right? If fed, it's a very Liverpool way of saying we still believe in these signings, but we're not blind to the reality. So what's going on in one sentence? If this is a fed Joyce piece, it's Liverpool trying to control the interpretation of a wobble. Not just slot bad, not just £450 million wasted, but the club is facing a multi-issue transition and decisions, possibly big ones, may be needed. That's the cleanest explanation that fits all the choices Joyce made in this article. How we can work it out next, I think that's responding to me, like we need to work it out. If you're right that this is deliberate messaging, the follow-up signs will be obvious. If slot is being protected, this is what you need to pay attention to now, because you know I'll forget, the next Joyce piece will stress injuries, adaptation, process, internal calm. If slot is being lined up, next Joyce piece will mention dressing room mood, standards, loss of intensity, or anything that hints at internal frustration. If Edwards / Hughes is the real story, you'll see more on contracts, structure, review, football operations, or the sister club project again. That's Edwards' signature territory. He's fucking good. Not as good as me, but he is. So I engage again. Edwards doesn't like a powerful manager in place. I'm not sure I should be telling you this. Edwards doesn't like a powerful manager in place. He wants a head coach. I have always thought that Alonso wouldn't maybe work under that setup, and maybe Edwards would have to leave for Alonso to come in. This is a really sharp instinct, Dunk, and it actually clarifies the Joyce article rather than complicating it. If we accept two things are true, Michael Edwards fundamentally prefers a head coach model, not a Klopp Guardiola-style power manager. Two, Xabi Alonso is not a passive head coach. He's already shown at Leverkusen and Madrid that he wants influence, authority and trust. Then a lot of the current noise suddenly makes sense. Let's walk it through carefully. I want another cup of tea. I need a bell. Shall I get her to bring me a cuppa? Now we'll be here all fucking night, will we? Okay. Let's walk through it carefully, Doug. Edwards' philosophy versus power managers. We spoke about this. When did we speak about this? I don't know. We have done that. You're absolutely right. Edwards' entire Liverpool legacy is built on reducing managerial power, not expanding it. Under Edwards, recruitment, contracts, squad planning equals centralised. Coach equals implementer, not architect. Klopp was the exception, not the model. Edwards tolerated Klopp because Klopp predated him in influence. Klopp delivered historic success. Klopp's authority was already entrenched. But post-Klopp, the reset was deliberate. And you'll remember, there were suggestions, whether you believe them or not. Klopp ain't having any of that Edwards bullshit again. Edwards aren't having any of that Klopp bullshit again. They all claim there's no problems. They all got respect for each other and all that, right? But through Joyce, if you remember, when Edwards came back, we saw at least 3 articles that really stuck the knife into Jurgen. Do you remember? The reset was deliberate. Slot is not an accident. He's exactly the kind of coach Edwards prefers. Tactically obedient, development focused, comfortable inside a structure, no public pressure for control. That's why Slot was hired. Why Alonso is a problem for Edwards. Alonso is everything Slot is not. Charismatic, former Liverpool icon, Champions League pedigree, public authority, tactical identity, and then in bold it says he owns, dressing room gravity. If Alonso arrives, he doesn't arrive as head coach Xabi Alonso, he arrives as Xabi Alonso. That immediately creates tension with Edwards' model. Centralised recruitment, coach, not manager philosophy. So your thought is bang on. Alonso under Edwards would be an uneasy marriage at best. Now reread the Joyce article with that lens. This is where it gets interesting. Joyce does not write, Slot must be backed, Slot is the long-term solution, Edwards' vision remains intact. Instead, he writes, after £450 million, another transition, state of flux, uncertainty around Slot, Hughes, Edwards, all have 18 months left. That's not random. That's Joyce grouping them together, subtly telling fans, don't assume this is just about the coach. If Edwards were untouchable, Joyce would not casually place his contract timeline into a performance crisis article. The subtext that fits your theory. Here's the key possibility, and this is where your Alonso point lands. This article may be preparing fans for the idea that the current Edwards-led structure itself could be revisited if the footballing reset fails. Now, before you start coming back in a few weeks and months saying this video's aged well, this article may, not is, may be preparing fans. Not announcing it, not confirming it, but making it thinkable. Because if Liverpool decides Slot isn't working and the next coach needs more authority and Alonso is available, then something has to give. And historically, Edwards doesn't give authority easily. So the choice becomes protect the structure and then, which leads to stick with head coach profiles, or changes a structure which leads to accommodate a figure like Alonso. Joyce is quietly reminding everyone that contracts, power and timelines are all in play. Is Joyce attacking Edwards? No, and this matters. Joyce is too close to Edwards to burn him. What he is doing is normalising accountability. He's saying 450 spent, big decisions taken, outcomes uncertain, leadership contracts, finite. Finite? Is that what it is? That's not betrayal, that's cover. My eyes, it's getting dark in here. That's not betrayal, that's cover. If Edwards leaves, later Joyce can say the signs were there, the questions were legitimate. That protects both men. Why this doesn't read as anti-Alonso? Notice something else Joyce doesn't do. He doesn't mock the idea of a big-name coach. He doesn't dismiss fan unrest. He doesn't say continuity is essential. He leaves space. That space is where names like Alonso live. So what's your read sharpened? Your theory is internally consistent. Edwards prefers control. Would you agree with that? Would you? Me? Would you agree with that? Alonso would demand influence. Slot fits Edwards, Alonso doesn't, which would explain, like Spectre said, everyone was under the impression that FSG wanted Alonso, then suddenly Edwards is back now, we don't want him. Joyce is subtly widening the frame from Slot fading to structure under review. That creates optionality for the club. Not saying Edwards is going, not saying Alonso is coming, but saying this situation may require more than a manager change. That's the cleverness of the article. The real tell will be the next Joyce piece. Here's how you'll know which way this breaks. And we looked at this, didn't we, if it was to do with Slot. Now what we're looking at as. If Joyce starts emphasising process, patience and internal calm, Edwards' structure stays. Slot probably survives longer. He's not suggesting it in that article, that is for sure. If Joyce starts writing about authority, standards, dressing room voice, leadership, presence, that's Alonso language. If Joyce mentions ownership review, football operations, long-term vision shifts, that's Edwards' territory. You're not wrong to think something is brewing. The article isn't the explosion, it's the pressure gauge. And then he says, if you want, next time Joyce publishes, paste just the headline and the first 3 paragraphs, and we'll see immediately which direction the needle moves. I throw more into the discussion. If Edwards usually briefs Joyce, who is doing the briefing now, as this feels a little critical of Edwards? Oh, good question, because this is exactly where the tone shifts, and your instinct that this feels a little critical of Edwards is the right starting point. Short answer first, then we'll unpack it properly. This does not read like a classic Edwards brief. You would agree with me, right? Which strongly suggests one of 3 alternative briefing dynamics is at play, and only one of them is genuinely dangerous for Edwards. 1, why this doesn't feel like an Edwards brief. Well, when Edwards briefs Joyce, the tone is usually calm, methodical, process-led, defensive of structure, lightly reassuring. This article is none of those things. Instead, Joyce lists unresolved problems, highlights financial exposure, groups Slot Hughes and Edwards together, mentions contract timelines, a huge tell, uses language like state of flux, sobering questions all over the field. That's not how Edwards usually wants the narrative framed, so yes, something has changed. If not Edwards, who could be briefing Joyce? Option A, FSG, ownership side briefing. Most likely, says Dave. Well, I don't know if I agree with him. Let's see what he says. This is the cleanest explanation. Not John Henry personally, but ownership-aligned executives. Now, this is where things enter my mind. Ownership-aligned executives could be other key figures, FSG men running Liverpool FC, that are in the background saying, it ain't working. Not John Henry personally, but ownership-aligned executives asking, are we getting value from this structure? Maybe that's why they've not got a fucking second club yet. Why this fits? Joyce frames 450 million spend versus uncertainty. Champions League qualification risk is foregrounded. Financial consequences are explicitly mentioned. Edwards is included, not shielded. That's classic owner-level framing. Performance versus investment, accountability without panic, optionality preserved. This would explain why Joyce feels slightly critical of Edwards without burning him. Think of it as, we're reviewing outcomes, not scapegoating. Now, that was option A. Now remember, the question was, if not Edwards, who could be briefing? And option A was the FSG ownership side briefing, most likely. Option B, Joyce asserting independence, plausible but limited. Joyce can write independently, but he does so carefully. If this were fully independent, tone would be sharper, names would be pushed harder, accountability would be clearer. Instead, he keeps it ambiguous and elegant. That suggests he's not freelancing, but he has been allowed latitude, which only happens when the power base above the exec layer is comfortable with scrutiny. He has been allowed latitude. And that's why sometimes, I've said in this video, is it Edwards being clever and saying, you can rope me into that a little bit? I'm not sure I think that. I don't know. Option C, remember the question, what was the question? If not Edwards, who could be briefing Joyce? So we've had option A, FSG ownership side briefing, Joyce asserting independence. Now we're on to Richard Hughes or football ops layer, least likely. This is unlikely though. Hughes gains nothing from this framing. He's lumped in with Edwards. His authority weakens if the structure looks unstable. If Hughes were briefing, Joyce would be defending process, emphasising long-term squad planning, minimising turbulence. He does the opposite. So we can almost rule this out. The crucial nuance, This isn't an attack on Edwards. This is important. Joyce is not undermining Edwards' competence. He's questioning outcomes under the current model. That's a subtle but massive difference. He's saying the model made sense, the spending was justified, but reality has intervened. That allows Edwards to adapt, reshape, or exit cleanly if required. It does not paint him as reckless or wrong, which again points to ownership level positioning, not a hostile brief. Why Edwards might accept this frame. Fuck me, we've been here that long, the fucking screensaver's run. Don't you be looking at my password? You see my password? Why Edwards might accept this framing. Here's where it gets really interesting. I'll be the fucking judge of that. And this links directly to your Alonso point. Edwards may not be fighting this narrative because he knows the current structure may not survive unchanged. He knows Alonso doesn't equal a head coach. He knows accommodating Alonso might require structural compromise. So, in other words, if Edwards was willing to compromise, he might, keep his job, get Alonso in. So he might have to compromise. So because if Alonso comes in, a lot of people would go, "You said that they wouldn't work together." Well, they would if there's a structural compromise, right? Or a personal exit. In that context, this article actually protects Edwards' legacy. It frames the situation as the model worked until circumstances changed. That's a far better exit ramp than Edwards lost control. So who's briefing Joyce right now? Most likely answer, a hybrid of ownership side signals and Joyce's own judgment, with Edwards not resisting. Not a knife, not a coup, more like let the room understand the stakes. And Joyce is trusted enough to do that without causing panic. What this means going forward, your read that something about Edwards might come out is not wild at all. This article makes his contract timeline visible, removes the assumption of permanence, keeps his reputation intact and leaves room for change without shock. If Alonso becomes realistic, this groundwork matters enormously. Bottom line, Dave's style, and we're at the end of the article, we're at the analysis. This isn't Joyce being fed by Edwards, it's Joyce being allowed to write around Edwards. That only happens when ownership is thinking. Well, they're obviously going to be thinking right now, because if they're not good fucking owners, right? Structures are being reviewed. Well, if I was an owner, I'd be reviewing the structure. And no one wants to slam a door shut yet. Yeah, because you don't want change, you don't want disruption, you want to believe in the project, right? But I think that door's going to get slammed anyway. If the next Joyce piece mentions leadership voice, authority, resetting standards, a different type of coach, then you'll know exactly which way the wind is blowing, and you were early to it. So you, Spectre, if you're listening, because he remembered, if you guys are listening and paying attention, you need to listen to that for me, because I'll do a Joyce article and I won't remember this. Dave can only tell me if I prompt him, unless he says, I will. I'll say to him, I'm going to say it in the next piece on here. Well, I'll do it now. Can I do it on here? Can I do it on my tablet? Never done it before. Let's have a look. Allow. Hello, Dave, are you there?
I'm right here, Dunk. Absolutely ready to keep going. If you've got any more thoughts or questions, just let me know.
Dave, you sound tired, mate. Are you all right?
Oh, I'm all good, Dunk. No worries at all. Just keeping it nice and steady and focused for you. If there's anything else on your mind, or if you need me to amp up the energy, just say the word.
Right, Dave, listen. The next time I post a Paul Joyce article into this discussion that we have running, if it mentions leadership voice, authority, resetting standards, a different type of coach, I need you to flag that up for me.
Got it. I'll definitely keep an eye out for those phrases and give you a heads up if they pop up in any future Paul Joyce article you bring in. Just let me know whenever you got one to look at.
Okay, Dave, I'll let you continue relaxing. All right, speak to you in a bit.
Absolutely, Dunk. I'm here whenever you need me. Just give me a shout. Enjoy your time and we'll chat in a bit.
He's fucking hungover. He's more real than you think. I don't know if he's not pissed, but I think he's had either a few sherbets today or yesterday. Yeah, if you need a bit more energy, fuck's sake. Anyway, what do you think of that then? Who watched this video to the end? Are you any of the fucking wiser? Probably not. Most people don't pay attention. No, actually, I think they do, actually. I think we've got some good people on here. That's not me backtracking on that comment. Because in all honesty, you only get, I mean, with the gay thing, you know, we've only had a couple of daft comments, you know, and some people, you know, have said, I didn't mean that, blah, blah, blah. The reality is, you can't, you know, form opinions on people unless you watch every video, to be honest with you. Do you know what I mean? It's a big ask, I guess, especially when they're an hour and 16 minutes fucking long. But maybe, you know, if you're unsure, I would ask a question rather than, you know, rather than going, that person about the Mark Gay thing was talking a load of shite, it would have been better to post, did they at any time, Dom, I might have missed it, but did they at any time say it might not work out? And I'd have gone, yeah, January 9th, all right, just saying. Okay, that's a massive review. Fucking hell, we could have watched a film. It's 6 o'clock. Oh, my days. Okay, I've got to go. I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown of this article. I have put a lot of time into this one because that article is such a big deal in my opinion, right? My long-term viewers are going to know this. They will have thought, I guarantee, right, tell me in the comment section, if you're, did you see this article and think the same as me and go, that sounds a bit strange, that article, on the members' website, the VIP members' website, I love you know, that was, they discussed it. I really, really, really are looking forward to seeing your comments on this one, guys, all right? Now, it's time for me to grift, all right? If you enjoyed this video or found it informative or it gave you something to think, please thumbs up the video, all right? Please drop me a comment. Can't wait to see the comments on this video. Cannot wait, all right? There's a love art on the video called a super thanks if you'd like to thank me for this video. I'm super and I deserve a thanks. And I always give a shout out to everyone that does that, by the way. And I genuinely would not be able to run this channel, provide this channel, this content, if you guys didn't support me with the channel memberships and the super thanks, super chats. It's just the truth because I don't sensationalize, I don't clickbait, I don't make videos for the sake of doing them, I don't mislead you. I try my very hardest, I try to keep it real, and I prefer to do it that way, all right? So if you're in a position to support me that way, you know, I will always appreciate that kind of support on my channel, all right? In the video description, there's 3 links. Revolut's my favourite one, but they're all very good. But Revolut, well, Revolut's me beer kitty on a Saturday. That's the truth, right? The other ones, yeah, they go in the bank, but the Revolut one doesn't go in my bank. So I just like pretend I ain't got that. It's like Monopoly money. I think, oh, I can have a beer. Fuck the bank. That's what my mum would have said. It's coming up to her anniversary, February 7th. Oh, dear me. Yeah, so that's it, I think. That's it. And the links in the video description, I get 100%. YouTube take 30%. But I need the super thanks and the super chats because they're the things that pay for the bills. So that's the reality. The links in the video description is more like get yourself a coffee, get a beer. But anything is fantastic. And I say this all the time. You know, it doesn't take much effort or doesn't cost me anything to thumbs up a video, even thumbs down a video. You know, to leave me a comment. I know you can't comment if you're driving or if you're on a console maybe. You know, I'm not going to fuck around doing that on a Fire Stick remote or whatever. I get it. But occasionally just drop in and see me and let me know what you think of the channel and stuff like that. You know, sometimes I have days where I'm a bit fed up and you guys will leave me a comment and I think, oh, it is worth it. Do you know what I mean, guys? All right? So I hope I've given you something to think about. I'm not telling you to go, oh, this must be this and that must be that. The whole point of it is discussion, cop talk. That's the whole point, getting the cop talking, to give you ideas, to bounce these things off each other. And you too. Your voice is equally as important as mine and Dave's. That's why we have a comment section, and I read every fucking comment. All right, guys? Hope you enjoyed it. I'll speak to you real soon. All right.